Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social podcast. Today we're going to be talking about the ninth round of the Cyclocross World Cup, which took place in Benidorm, and with me here to do that is Issam. Thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Coming to you from Benidorm, or more specifically Kalp, for this episode. It was a very entertaining race. Benidorm in that regard hardly ever disappoints. The course makes for close racing, and today was no different. Early in the race, we could enjoy some team tactics of Paul Sauze with Michael van Toerenhout and Ele Iserbyt taking turns attacking, but it was to no real effect. We had a very big leading group of 10-15 riders, and all the favorites were pretty much there. In the third lap, Thibau Nys briefly took the lead, placed a small attack, but also he figured it was too early to make a move. The decisive moves came at the end of the race. Iserbyt and Van der Haar got away with a bit of help of Van Toerenhout, and this forced Van Aert to react. The Belgian closed the gap with Nys comfortably sitting in the wheel. Everything came back together as the race went into the final lap, with Nys taking the lead. Nys attacked on the steep paved climb up after the stairs, and that was a game over moment. He dropped Iserbyt from his wheel and made no mistakes after that. He went on to take victory. Van Aert was out of position there and couldn't respond to the attack of Nys. He tried to make a move similar to what Van der Poel did last year, but despite the best hopes of the drone operator, it wasn't to be for him. He eventually finished fourth because he had to let Iserbyt and Van der Haar ahead after the climb. Very mature ride here by Nys, Issam. I think he executed nearly flawlessly. I only saw one mistake on the big screen in the slow-mo. But apart from that, he did what you need to do on a course like this. He stayed calm, waited for his moment. And it, apart from the good start, was a lot similar to his performance at the Belgian Championships, right? He makes this small move early on in the race to test the legs, to show to the rest, look, I'm here, I'm in the white pants, I'm going to be the first rider in 4 years to win wearing the European jersey with white pants, and then he just finishes it off coolly in the final lap, and that's what you need to do here. You can't make your move too early, and that's what he did. He didn't blow up, waited for the right moment. Hardly anybody can follow him on those sections on the road, and here we are in the cross, and same story.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when he started to test his legs in a way, it started to itch. He wanted to get up front, and I feel that it showed there that he was in good form, and it was just going to be a matter of, is he going to be able to get himself in a good position on the last lap and make a move? And he did. And as you said, it was a very mature ride. It was a strong ride, but you need to have strong legs. And I think at the moment, Nys is in a very good shape. The form is good, and he's just making very good use of that. And you have to. And this is a course that, in a way, I would say, suits him. He can definitely use some of his abilities, the climbing, a bit of that explosive part that he has in a way. Sometimes it doesn't always come out, but I think that, today just the circumstances really were in his favor also, and he was just able to use that to his advantage. So yeah, I think for Nys it was a very strong outing. I think that not many mistakes. He was on the edge. As you said, that mistake that was also shown on the broadcast, that was really one of those moments where you could see that he was pushing it at that moment. Other than that, when it mattered the most, he was always positioned quite well. And when he made his move last lap, he was there with Iserbyt, and he could counter the attack of Iserbyt uphill, and they never saw him again in a way. They saw him up front, but they were never really able to get closer. And I think that was, from Nys' perspective, a very strong ride.
It most certainly was. To what extent do you agree with the perception that was portrayed that in 8 days Nys has completely turned around his season? Where before the Belgian Championships it was a bit of an iffy season, not sure if he could be satisfied with it, that these two victories really make the difference. Of course, that Belgian title was impressive. I always find the fixation in Belgium on the Belgian tricolor a bit silly, because every year that a European champion wins the Belgian champion, they start asking them questions like, will you pay the fine to wear the Belgian national champion's jersey? Will you wear it? Will you wear it? What about doing the same as Bart Wellens? wearing like the top in the European, but then wearing bibs that resemble the Belgian flag. Their obsession with that is always a bit funky, but it also shows you how highly regarded that Belgian national title is. It is, for a reason, called the Small World Championships in Belgium. They definitely rated a lot higher than the European title. To what extent do you agree with those comments? Because to me, pretty much since the start of that Christmas period, Nys has performed quite solidly again after what also was a good start to the the November month with that European title, with win in Overijse, with that win in Lokeren.
I look at my tone as well during this season, how I have talked about Nys, and I can see their case, because at times he starts to build sort of a certain expectation that I get from him going into the race, and you're like, okay, this is maybe a very good race for Nys, and at times he was not really able to deliver, and then you start to have those question marks in a way, and I think that maybe that's influenced his season to an extent where people look at his season and be like, oh, now he turned it around completely. I also think that in a way, winning the Belgium title is definitely something that is always is somewhat up there, and the way he did it as well was quite impressive. But then also today, despite the fact that it's just a World Cup, it's a World Cup with a certain Wout van Aert in it, and it's a World Cup where a lot of eyes are fixated on, and I think that the fact that he was able to deliver there, in terms of perspective, it will definitely be something in which the Belgian media and others look at and be like, oh, now he completely changes his season. Well, you can definitely argue that he has a season with some downs, for sure, but I think it has been a very solid season, and it only got better and better in a way, and he had to find himself, and he struggled a little bit at times, but I think overall he did very well. And again, today, I think was just kind of confirmation of him and the potential that he has and what he has shown over this season so far already. It was just got in a good position, but was just not really able to have that spectacular win. But I don't know how you can say that someone turned it around. Well, he won the European title, and before that had a very solid Christmas period. Sure, he had his downs. He's somewhat back up again, and it has been a very good season for him.
While Nys didn't have a perfect season, he did have that big dip following that win in Lokeren, which I mentioned before. Name me one full-time cyclocross rider this season that has been up there every single week. Because I don't think you can. We had Iserbyt with that suspension early in the season. We had Van Toerenhout, who didn't perform until the start of December. Van der Putte is having a dip now. Nieuwenhuis only started his season now. Van der Haar has had a very bad period. Every single top rider, and that also includes Aerts and Viseuren and just everyone, for everyone we can make these remarks that they had phases in the season in which they didn't live up to the expectations. So where I can see the case, hey, this Belgian title is really a proof that Nys has leveled up even more this season, I don't really see that for this race. And you mentioned Van Aert was in the race, and yeah, he was, but I don't really think that elevates this race to a much higher level. I've said it before, Van Aert is not treating this cyclocross season, just like last year, with any sense of urgency. He's doing this for fun, and he's doing this because he thinks it will help him win the Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix this season. In today's race, we could also see things that we pointed out in Gullegem and Dendermonde. In Dendermonde, we pointed out this is a course that suits Wout van Aert. It's no surprise that he, on pure power, does better than these riders. But in Gullegem, we pointed out, well, look at this. There's cornering here, and Van Aert is struggling. While this course is super fast, and you think it may be not that technical, the steering ability and confidence you need to have on this course, a combination of those two, is so important. I can't stress that enough. If you are coming onto those gravel sections with such high speed, you need to have full confidence in your own ability and in your bike to make it through those corners. It's super slick. I've seen and heard many riders slip out in these corners, or when you're in the forest, this after the climb, this super fast left-hander. Many riders that have trouble there as well. It's not easy. And you can see it, I think, quite well on the broadcast that you really need to push the limits on this course. You need to use every single meter. It's a course where you need to take the wide lines, utilize as much of the track as possible. And Van Aert just didn't have that confidence like we saw in Gullegem. His coach, Jan Bove, even mentioned, well, following that crash last year, we decided Van Aert was going to run the barriers today. We didn't want to risk anything. And that tells you all you need to know. For Van Aert, winning, finishing fourth, finishing anywhere in between or lower is irrelevant. He's been training here in Spain, he's living his best life, he's preparing to hopefully become, in the eyes of Flanders, their next champion, their next winner of the Tour of Flanders, their next winner of Paris-Roubaix, preferably both. And yes, he has power. And yes, he utilized that on the climb. But that can only do so much, especially if you need to start on the fourth row and spend quite a bit of energy in order to move to the front of the race.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also it doesn't help that he was, for the entirety of the race, he had to play catch up and he was always somewhat trying to get himself in a good position. Running the barriers didn't help him, and it was overall it was just very difficult for him to get in a solid position. And when you always have to compensate with that climb in a way, it will hurt you in the end. And I feel that was the case. It was just every time he had to spend so much energy. And I think that if you look at just the power and the strength, he was definitely with the legs to be able to play for a win. I feel it was going to be a difficult one because Nys was very good, but I feel that he was definitely going to be a little bit closer. But every time you have to close gaps and every time you have to move up again, and then you go into the barriers and there are four guys that are passing you, mainly in the beginning of the race when it was a bit more, was a bit closer and the bunch was a bit bigger. That just really hurt him, and then you have to start all over again passing them on the asphalt climb. So it wasn't an ideal race, and yeah, as you say, his priority is now going to be the road season, and we will see how that will play out. And we will enjoy Wout for one more race in Maasmechelen.
He eventually finished behind Iserbyt and Van der Haar. Iserbyt said he needed to use his iron balls to have a shot at victory today. How do you feel about his race? I think he and Van der Haar both were quite delighted to find a course with these conditions.
You said in the beginning, you said something along the lines of we could enjoy their tactics, their team tactics, but it was very annoying, I have to say, Iserbyt and Van Toerenhout, the way they were racing the first part of the race, because I felt that didn't make any sense, the tactics. It was just really, it was annoying. Orts was really the one that was trying to split that up, and for me at least, it doesn't really make you loved within the peloton, I would say, and it just doesn't, don't do anything significant with that, as you stated as well. So, but yeah, if you look at the race of Iserbyt and also Van der Haar really looked good today. It was a very good race from Van der Haar, and it looked like he was getting in a rhythm. It looked good, and that is, I think, for Van der Haar is a bit of a, although he had his better races, it definitely didn't look good, and he was in a period, obviously, where some of the races didn't suit him well. He was obviously lucky in Gullegem as well there with his injury, and that hampered his race there. So it wasn't the best of periods, but it felt today, at least you could see that you had a Van der Haar that was finally able to bring up a challenge for a podium. And eventually, he was able to do so. He was able to get around Van Aert, who was, really cooked after his attack on the climb, trying to make up some ground, but that just really cost him. Iserbyt was able to get back around, and Van der Haar was also able to do so and got ahead of him just before the barriers and was able to hold that position. So I think for Van der Haar, it was a very strong race, and for Iserbyt, he looked good for the entirety of the race. It was, at times, you thought that he was in a bit of trouble, but he was always up there, and I think that in the end, he just really, he was really there in the mix. He was the one that was in the wheel of Nys. He was the one that saw Nys depart in a way, but he never really gave up, and he always kept fighting, and I think a very deserved second place.
We remarked it a couple of times. We're in the phase of the season where everything is leading up to the World Championships. Before we said also the National Championships, but now it's just that battle for the rainbow jersey that remains. So Van der Haar's performance today is a much needed up leading up towards those World Championships. I have seen him before make a better impression here in Benidorm, although it never really translated to the results. He finished 7th in both previous editions here. But as you said, it's a much needed positive for him. He had a tough phase in the season, then he had that rebound 4th place in Gavre, but he also injured his knee there, and from there on it went downhill quite quickly for him, with Gullegem and Dendermonde not being great results for him, where also dislocating his shoulder in Gullegem. Still, I think he can take some sort of confidence towards those World Championships. In Oosterwijk at the National Championships, he looked good. I thought he made a decent, or maybe more than decent impression, considering the fact that the course didn't suit him at all. It was way too much running. In Gullegem, he was also doing fine until he dislocated his shoulder, and then ultimately today he was up there in the mix, gets on the podium. So he should be able to take some sort of positive momentum and some positive feelings forward towards those World Championships. But then again, it will depend on the course. As I said, he and Iserbyt must have been delighted that after weeks in the mud and the Dendermonde, Oosterwijk, snow in Zolder, they can finally hit some courses that suit them a bit better. These are the type of conditions that both of them do best in. So they will have been both quite satisfied. I don't really feel the need to comment anymore on the Pauwelsausen team tactics as you mentioned them. I didn't really notice them that much. In all fairness, I was also standing with just the sun on the big screen, so I just needed to try and see as much as possible from a distance there. Could see them quite a bit in the lap, around the pits, around the bridge, through the sand, second pits and barriers, but always a bit different, and especially things like that go a bit unnoticed when you're watching on site. But it was nice to see so many cyclists out there supporting their teammates or their former teammates or sometimes even their rivals. Silvia Persico was there, a bunch of other UAE riders were there. Saw Lotte Kopecky working in the pits a bit. So it was a good day, and that brings me to the point that yes, everything lines up towards the World Championships, but you also don't know how people are feeling at the moment. So some have taken a bit of a rest after the National Championships. Others have gone right through with training. Those are things we don't know, but ultimately our job or task is to try and clear through and untangle as much of this as possible to give our previews towards the World Championships. And I think Van Haar is looking quite solid at the moment, but again, we don't know what the course will be like in Ливан. Let's look at the entire top 10. Enough waffling for me. Behind Nys, Iserbyt, Van der Haar and Van Aert we find Van Toerenhout, ahead of home hero Orts, who took a solid 6th place, ahead of Van der Putten. Nieuwenhuis was in 8th, ahead of Verstringen, with Joshua Thibau completing the top 10. Two riders here, Issam, Emil Verstringen. He finishes 9th on a course that doesn't suit him that much. Think kind of in line of how he's been doing in recent weeks. But he lost out to Joris Nieuwenhuis. And I know we discussed him last week at the National Championships, but now that you've actually also seen him race, how do you feel about him? Here comes the question again, heading towards the World Championship.
Yeah, there it is. I mean, he looked good, I have to say. I think today is also, for someone that has been out for so long in a way, and basically barely has any racing rhythm and has not really been able to get used to this in a way. You know, he was basically jumping into the deep waters with this race. It's definitely not one of those races where you get an easy ride and where it's just basically, you know, you have to, sure, you can hang on in the wheels, but it's tough. And I think he managed well. I think that was a positive outing for Nieuwenhuis. I think that this is a race that somewhat confirms to me that we can say that his base is definitely okay. Question will be how good will that base be for the World Championships. I think that, you know, he is going to be one of those riders in which next weekend will be interesting as well. I think that we can definitely look at those results as well and have a good indication of what we can expect the week after, just because of his freshness and just because of the fact that he's basically just building towards the world. So I think that those races, Maasmechelen and Hogerheide, will definitely show where Nieuwenhuis is in a better way, I would say, because despite everything, it's an atypical race. But I feel that a top 10 here and the way he was racing and he was trying to hang on, I think that he looked quite good, and he will need those races to get better and better. So for him, I feel that in terms of progress, he could get a setback, but I don't really expect it. I feel that it is only going to be up, and towards the World Championships, he could be a guy on a very good day fighting for a top 5.
Or even a podium, because today's ride was quite good. I know he sat in the wheels for most of the race and didn't really do anything spectacular, but you need to account for the fact that his first lap was really bad. He was 36th, and yes, he got brought forward in the wheels. That's quite an impressive comeback. That cost a lot of energy. So he could have perhaps even ended a bit higher. Could he get a setback? Yes. I would agree with you that I don't think it's super likely. The eventual decision to postpone his season start so long, I think will work out quite well. It's better than this feeling at the start, 1 week, then we'll start. Not Beringen, but the next week. Just European Championships. Maybe Antwerp. The decision to just take the loss and try and save the season at the championships should work out well. He made a good impression. He looks quite sharp. So fingers crossed that all works out for him. He finished just behind Van de Putte. Van de Putte could have perhaps done better on this course, but I think he's probably feeling quite tired at this point in the season after how many races he's done. Joshua Thibau impressed me with a 10th place. He got some mini revenge on Van Turini, who beat him last week at the Nationals. Looked quite good for Thibau. Hopefully he can get a top 10 at the World Championships. It would always be nice to see some other flags than Dutch and Belgium in the top 10. Van Turini was a solid 11th. A couple of other riders to mention further down. Aerts and Viseur, both courses that didn't suit them. Well, I don't think I can make the case for Aerts, but Viseur definitely doesn't seem to have great form at the moment. Zweek, well, he looked quite okay, but he had a bad start, kind of like the Zweek we saw earlier in the season, needed to chase and then also flatted towards the end of the race. Ronhaar was up there, had a flat, then fell back. Mason had a chain issue at the start and therefore needed to chase back as well. I think that will cover it for the men's race. Let's move to the women's race there, because that also came down to a last lap battle. In this race, we saw, of course, Marie Schreiber, who else, take the fastest start, but quickly it became clear that it was Brandt who wanted to be in the driver's seat. Brandt, who had had a bad start, moved to the front, set the pace a couple of times, but we still had a leading group of 10-15 riders. This slowly got reduced until Brandt placed her first big attack. This attack was followed by Van Empel. Vash managed to hang in there, but Vos and Alvarado were dropped. However, this was not the decisive move. Going into the final lap, the pace dropped and everything came back together. 10 riders went into the final lap together, with ultimately Brandt again attacking up the paved climb. Van Empel followed again, but this time a few more riders managed to come back because Brandt didn't go all out. Schreiber tried an all-or-nothing attack over the top, but it didn't really be anything all or nothing. It was a third place in the end that she yielded from it. So it was something, but not the win. The win was contested between Brandt and Van Empel. Brandt took the lead as they passed pit 2, but at the barriers Van Empel timed her dismount better, overtook Brandt, and therefrom never gave away the leading position. Took the win in what was not really a closely contested sprint by Brandt. I'm a bit torn here, Issam, because on one hand, I want to say Brandt did too much, but on the other hand, I also kind of think she went down with a fight. She knew she needed to do something, pretty much needed to arrive solo. On this course, that would always be difficult against Van Empel. And I'm also torn on Van Empel, because where normally we say she's not really a cold-blooded killer, she doesn't have ice in her veins. Again, here in Benidorm, and it's not the first time we see it at this course, she leaves it very, very late. Today on the barriers, we've seen it before with a late dive bomb on Puck Pieterse. This is a really good course for her. She's unbeaten here, and She left it very late, very mature win in a style that we don't really see Van Empel do too often, but it's the second time this season because when it mattered the most at the European Championships, she also left it late and also got it done.
I think Van Empel was definitely waiting her moment out, and she did that very well. She left it very late, I have to say, and she kind of had the advantage there after the barriers, mounting back on the bike. I think Brandt was quite slow there, and that was for Van Empel the way to do it, and that eventually got her the leading position, and she never gave that away. And yeah, I think that for Van Empel today, it was a ride in which she just had to try and stay out of trouble, stay in front, and I think that she did that quite well, despite the fact that in the race there were a lot of moments in which a lot of riders were able to get back to the leading bunch in a way. She always positioned herself quite well. Yeah, I think for Brandt there was not really much else she could have done. She could have maybe surprised Van Empel and try something from behind. That's just a bit more difficult because then you don't know if it's going to be one of the riders sticking it up the inside and then you're third, then you're fourth, and you're fifth, and then you have to have your attack placed from much further behind. And I think that for Brandt it was just less of a risk. Try it from the lead and try to put Van Empel under pressure. Maybe she's going to make a mistake, and who knows, you get those 2-3 seconds and it could have been a totally different race, but that didn't happen. And she fought very hard, and in the end, as we basically know from Brandt so far this entirety of the season, and to be honest, in most of her career races that she has done, she's always someone that fights till the end if she gets the opportunity to do so, and she did today. I think that she was definitely a very worthy opponent, but Van Empel on this course is just it's a very good match, and it was again shown today.
Van Empel did kind of what she could. I think that in a sprint between Van Empel and Brandt, Van Empel is the fastest. For the World Championships or any other race, I wouldn't be fully confident in it. We saw today again, Brandt came quite close, but Van Empel never really seemed threatened by it. Brandt was on the wrong side of the wheel for the corner as well. So I'm thinking back to Baal again, right? And Van Empel came from the wheel with that late surge after Brandt looked to have the win in the bag. And it was close, but Van Empel got it. And that's how a lot of these races go. Even if you throw a lot at Van Empel, she still wins. And she gave an interview at the team presentation this week where she said she didn't agree with the critique that her season has been disappointing. Although I don't think her season is disappointing, it's definitely not as dominant as last season. In that regard, it makes quite a lot of sense that there were questions about her. We've said it a number of times that we both think that Van Empel is the strongest rider, but that the gap is much smaller than last year. If she makes some mistakes, doesn't have a good day, or if others absolutely seize the day, live up to the moment, then Van Empel is beatable, where last year that impression was not there really at any moment apart from 2 races in the Christmas block. Today, she saved energy, sitting in the wheels, didn't really take much initiative, and frankly, there was also no reason for her to do so. I wonder if she took it easy to maybe give Vos an opportunity to come into the race. Her teammate needed to start on the 4th row, spent quite some time moving up. Made a good impression to me, but then came the final laps and that climb. It was just a bit too much for Vos. She looked good, but starting so far back, 4th row, needing to fight her way up, I think it just cost her a bit too much. Nevertheless, a strong outing by her, and in that regard, a solid outing by the Visma Lease bike team, which placed 3 riders in the top 10, with Gladenova finishing 10th, and will for sure circle back to her in a bit. But I don't know, how do you feel? Do you think that Van Empel maybe did something for Vos, or am I looking into it too much now, and was it really just the best tactic for her to win that race? And as said, Brandt knew she pretty much needed to arrive solo to win.
Van Empel was probably a little bit more comfortable sitting in the wheel instead of leading out, because this is just a course in which when you're ahead and the rider behind you makes a move, very hard then to cover it the next corner. I feel that for Van Empel also, just strategically, it was probably the best to just be in the wheel. Brandt is someone that always will be going quite fast, so normally her pace would be enough, not for a third rider to, think of having an opportunity, trying to move it inside, outside, or making your life a little bit more difficult. So it was, I think tactically, it was just a better move to just let Brandt lead her out in a way. And then it was just basically waiting for that moment. And despite the fact that this is a very difficult course to overtake in a way, you have the room to do it, but it's hard to pick your moment, and you can cover it quite well if you see it coming. You just get those moments, and the barriers was one of those moments where the mounting for Brandt was just very bad, and she got that opportunity and it worked out. So I don't think she was really looking to helping out Vos in a way, or giving her a better shot at a better result. I think that Vos really had to give a lot to get in that position, and that cost her in the end. But I feel that despite that, it was a very good race for Marianne, and she was able to be in the mix, and probably the maximum result in the end for Vos.
Vos came just short of Marie Schreiber. SD Works duo Schreiber-Vash made a solid impression today. I always kind of view them in like a trident, also with Backstedt. For Backstedt, this course, while it kind of suits her, the decisive feature also includes gravity, and that climbing is not the best thing for Backstedt is known. So that doesn't surprise me that she got dropped there, but she made a solid outing. She got beaten by the SD Works duo. And that Schreiber is the one finishing on the podium is then somewhat surprising. Not only did she turn around what was a disappointing Christmas period following that win in Hulst, she, in the race, also was not the dominant SD Works rider. Vash was the one up there. She was able to follow the earlier attacks of Brandt and Van Empel. But then in the end, the roles reversed and positioning was so important. I like what Schreiber did. In the final lap, she made that all or nothing move in the hope that Brandt and Van Empel would look at each other. It didn't work out. And again, I already said it in the summary, it was not really an all or nothing move, because in the end she finishes third partly because of that move. So that's not nothing, but it's also not all. So let's just call it a risky or an audacious attack, and I like to see that from time to time. The strategy on this course of starting out hard makes sense because you can get in the wheels. She didn't really do anything too stupid. It looked quite solid. Still, it was surprising to me that she got into that position. But it came down to positioning because everything came back together. Where Vash throughout the race might have been the stronger rider, the positioning of Vash going into that final lap just wasn't good enough. And Schreiber benefited from that. But still, I think that Vash is in good form. It looked good what she delivered today. We have covered this before. She is a rider that's always dangerous towards championships. We're heading towards that phase in the season, and Vash is once again proving that she's ready. And next week we go to Hogerheide, and last year she finished second here in Hogerheide. So I don't know. I think Vash is dangerous. I'm not going to say here that she is easily going to win or even going to finish on the podium. But Pieterse had a minor cold, didn't start, but Vash was definitely looking good. But in the end, you can call it maybe a slight steal. Schreiber is on the podium.
Yeah, I mean, I just looked it up again, and Schreiber was behind Alvarado on the last lap before she moved up. And she was really in a position, I think, that at that point you probably are not going to be the one finishing on the podium. But just on that climb, she was able to get herself in third, passing Vash, who I felt was the stronger out of the two, but never really made one of those moves. And I felt that if Vash did that, she probably could have gotten a little bit more out of it than Schreiber did. But Schreiber tried it. Schreiber then in the end was not really able to keep it up there up front, and I think in the end third was, if we talk about maximizing a result, that was definitely one. It's a course where if you're a bit of a baller, you have some bluff, it can work, it can do favors, and it can help you out in certain situations and get yourself in a better position than it normally would have been on any other type of course. Yeah, I think for Schreiber it was, again, one of those better races that she had this season. And for Vash, it's looking good, and hopefully she's going to be able to get herself in a good position next weekend as well. And if everything goes right, then, for Liévin, she's definitely going to be someone that could be a very strong underdog. It's going to be interesting to see what she can do, because I really hope that she's able to get to World Championships without any issues and have the best legs in a way and the best form to be able to perform there, because I think she definitely deserves it, and it will be interesting.
Let's look at the entire top 10 then, because behind Van Empel, Brandt and Schreiber, Vos finished 4th, as we said. My opinion, a great ride by her. I think I already mentioned it quite briefly, but that start position hurted her quite a bit, and then needing to move through the field cost quite a chunk of energy. So maximized performance, probably. She really just was short on that climb in the end, but still, just wanted to note again, impressive. Vos was 5th ahead of Pakstedt. Casasola rebounds with a solid 7th place. Looks like last week at the National Championships was a bit of a bad day and that it's going on the up for her. Alvarado finishes 8th after battling some physical problems. Van der Heijden was 9th, with then Victoria Gladonova completing the top 10. And Issam, I need to take every hat and cap, everything that I own off, because she ate and she left no crumbs today. It was a masterclass, apart from the start, because she was 46th after the start when I saw her past the first time. Then she moved up, but it took time. 27th, 20th, 14th, putting in a number of the fastest laps of the race, or at least of those laps. And she just kept moving up and eventually finishing 10th. I remember last week I was kind of wondering what was going on with her. Somebody in the comments pointed out that she made the decision to take a longer break to build a bigger endurance base for the road season. If there's anything to go by, her form is looking absolutely great. I know that last year I made a couple of comments that from the junior woman, I think she is the rider that has the most potential in her, the most margin for growth. She's not been on a big team. She can benefit from a better environment around her. She will benefit from the better equipment and the better time trial position, something that she only started doing very recently. And if this is anything to go by, again, it's looking quite good, because that was a stellar performance. And then, 14th place for Géry is also a great performance, right, for a first year U23. Even 16th by Ferguson is a great place, but compared to the ride that Gladonova put in, it's easily forgotten that Géry at some point was running in 3rd in the race.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's getting in the top 10, and also with her absence in a way, trying to build that endurance. I think that it's just a very, very, very strong outing from Gladonova, and I think that it is, on a course like this, when you're not in the greatest of positions, you can still make something out of your race, but it's just way harder to do so. And it's also mentally just, you have to just keep going and pick up the riders, and I think she did very well. And it was, for me, it was a bit of a surprise, I have to say, because I didn't really know what to expect if she was going to be racing in Benidorm. But this is very strong, and I think that, for Géry as well, it was a very, very strong race. I think that Géry definitely had at certain moments was thinking maybe a little bit, was too eager and maybe wanted a bit too much out of this race. I think that if she was a bit more calculated and took her chances a bit better, could have been maybe a better race, and she probably would have been a bit closer to Gladonova. But I think for Géry it was a good race, and as you said, Ferguson also had a good outing. But I feel that just because of that result from Gladonova, it's just you have good, better, and then you have the best at the moment. And I feel that was a very good result, and we will see what that will mean for the remainder of the season and the World Championships and what she can do. We will, I will, and I definitely know that you will as well, and I think everyone that is listening should as well keep an eye on what these women will do on the road, because they are all, riders with a lot of potential, and it will be interesting to see how they will grow on the road. And then when they come back to cyclocross next season again, but I shouldn't be too carried away. We still have a World Championships ahead of us, so let's just focus on that.
When I saw Gladonova come by pit 1 a couple of times, it looked like she was sprinting in the mass sprint of the Tour de France. She was going all out with real panache. She was giving it everything she had, and that was great to see. Géry exploded a bit, but I also respect the effort. On this course, as said, it makes sense to try and position yourself in the wheels. She never took the lead, but she was trying to stick it up there, trying to get into a group, and it might work someday. Today wasn't that day, and she fell back quite far in the final 2 laps, but that's life, and I don't really blame her for it, because if it does split up and she is in the group, she can be looking at a very, very solid result. Talking about solid results, I would like to mention Carlotta Borello, surprising Italian champion last week, had a good race, solid outing, finished 15th, was confusing a couple of people thinking that it was Casasola around us on the course, but that certainly wasn't the case. Then we move on, because this weekend there were also the Youth World Cups. The men's U23 World Cup also came down to a final lap battle. Noah, when are you going to tell us something new? When we hit the junior races. But Del Grosso, he was the big favorite coming in. He didn't really seem too bothered today. He let other people dictate the race. Guus van der Einde led for a very, very large part of the race, placed multiple attacks. Del Grosso just let it happen. Van der Einde attacks, I'm not riding behind any Dutch people. Romein attacks, I'm not chasing a Dutch rider. Michels was forced to do pretty much everything, with Sparvel enjoying life. He was in the wheels, right in between, but in the final lap, playtime was over. Del Grosso took the lead, a tap up the paved climb. Game over, victory for Del Grosso. Behind, Michels managed to take second place, with Sparvel taking an impressive third place here. Issam, what do you want to know from this race?
When you look at the results, it's obviously a bit closer than we have seen so far this season. It seems that Del Grosso was definitely playing the waiting game and wanted to pick his moment, and I think that is probably the wisest decision. Just very smart, because you just know that your attack will be a decisive one, or at least it will be very difficult to be countered, because you're just so close to the finish at that point, and just hard to make up ground again. I think that Sparvel getting on the podium is very interesting, so I definitely want your take on that and how his race went. But I also see an Italian, Stefano Viezzi, in fifth, and Viezzi is definitely one of those prospects, has great talent. It's great to see him up there. What did you make of his race as well? So both Sparvel and Viezzi is definitely the ones I'm interested in at the moment.
Viezzi might be just the ride of the day. Well, maybe I would put Gladenov ahead, but regardless, Viezzi did not have a great start. He was 19th, he moved up into 16th, and he just kept putting the hammer down. He kept pushing super hard. He was pushing up the climb, he was nailing the corners, despite the group being ahead and this annoying feeling of, I can see the big group ahead, but I just can't close that gap. He was in that really, really, really crappy position for quite some time. He could see the group ahead, but he just couldn't close that 5-6 second gap to them. That's probably the worst place to be as a cyclist. It hurts so much. I've been there on the road a number of times, and especially if you can't close it, at some point you think like, maybe I should just drop back to the peloton. But Viezzi doesn't think that way. He kept pushing, and it eventually paid off, because the penultimate lap, just like in the women's race, was a really, really slow lap. This allowed Viezzi to come back to that group, move his way right through it, and take fifth in what was a photo finish for fourth place. It was really, really impressive. This is not necessarily a course that is Stefano Viezzi territory. Last year he didn't really do all too well here in the juniors race. He's not the most powerful rider, but what I saw today was impressive. And it also shows again the first year's U23 are really good. There are 3 in the top 6 with Senna Romein. This is a good course for him, but also delivering. Sparvel you asked about, he was also impressive. He was in the mix, kind of in the wheels. In the first lap, he made some moves, but he seemed to have learned from earlier this season when those early moves often cost him. His teammate and countryman Bisio wasn't there. He had a DNS. He was supposed to race. I did see him at the training yesterday, but I think he must have fallen ill or something because he didn't start. Sparvel was in the wheels, and he just lacked a tiny bit in the end to compete with Michels and Del Grosso. No shame, right? Those riders are 4 years older, but he was right in the wheels, right in the mix. Impressive ride by him. I don't really think he could have done much more than maximize his third place performance. Then I think a few other remarks. It was, as said, a quite close race at the front. If you look at the other riders, this is not a good course for courses. It is a good course for dogs, but he took a tumble when he was up there in the mix. And Haverdings kind of been up and down this season. He's had a ankle injury, and that seems to be affecting him a bit. He wasn't really up there. Accurate course was too fast for him. And that is kind of it, what I have about the Menu 23, unless you have anything else.
No, not really. And I think that it is just also, the nature of this course. Some riders that are maybe have just that ability of putting the watts down and being able to utilize these type of courses, they just thrive in a way. But I think it also is somewhat of a good benchmark towards the World Championships. And I think that, Del Grosso is just confirming that he is the biggest favorite. And behind him, we just see every time that it is, Michels at times. And then there are some other riders that are in the mix. And I think I feel, and maybe you can give your take on that, I feel that it's getting somewhat bigger and bigger, the riders that are behind that could be fighting for a podium eventually at the World Championships. What is your take on that? Because I feel that it's growing a little bit compared to what we had in mind in the first couple of World Cups.
I would still favor Michels quite comfortably for second. Behind that, the biggest difference is probably that where earlier we thought that place was locked in for Haverdings, and Haverdings perhaps could be the one beating Michels, that outlook has changed quite a bit now. Because Haverdings has fallen back, this pack which we assumed would be fighting for fourth with a large number of riders has moved up a position and therefore is all of a sudden in podium contention. I would think it's a bit far to say that Michels has fallen into that pack. Yes, his Belgian championships weren't great, and if you watch that, I can certainly see how, especially considering the fact that in Besançon it also wasn't amazing, his performance, too many crashes. However, look at his result in Diegem. He finishes 9th in the elites there. He finishes 6th in the elites in Baal. He's been up there enough, and also today he gets it done. So I would probably come to that conclusion. Then in the junior women's category, we saw a strange race, I would say, because I rushed from the start to the bridge. And when we were at the bridge, I saw Lise Revol, the French champion, already had a 5-second gap, and she was never seen again. By the end of the first lap, she had 10 seconds. By the end of the second lap, it were 15 seconds. And then a curious game about seconds evolved. On the paved climb, Carrier, pretty much every lap, she had a bad start and then took the lead of the chasing group, dropped the watt she has, took like 5 seconds back from the gap, in one lap even 7 seconds, but then she proceeded to lose everything in the rest of the course. Especially in the section after the start until the sandpit, Revol just kept expanding her lead, which was more than enough of a buffer to survive the attacks of Carrier on the paved climb. Revol took the win. Carrier dropped the opposition for second place in the penultimate lap, and then for third place, that was decided by a crash early in the final lap. There was these corners where you shoot like out of the parking lot onto the field with these banked 180s. There was a crash by Dutern, and she took down Pelizzotti in the mix. Cusack had to dismount, and Kabaka was gone, and Cusack couldn't get back to the wheel of Kabaka, so Kabaka took a somewhat surprising third place here. Where was Lisson Desprez in this? She's been second a number of times this season. She rolled a Tubler in the first lap, and then it's worth noting that the Czech women were not here.
You know why?
The federation did not send a team here. They had 2 riders in the men junior race, but they were here on individual basis. I think it was probably a bit too expensive for them.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, that can happen. Is it similar to what we saw kind of last year? I think because then it was Jiri in that case that was able to from the start kind of put the others under pressure, had a gap from lap 1, and they never really were able to get back to her. Or do you really feel that, with Carrier it was just more of a bad start and they're just never really able to get back because of the the distance that she had to bridge, and Revol just being able to be sort of an equal and never really letting her to get back in the race?
So last year these dynamics played in reverse, with Géry being up front and expanding her gap on the climb, but Gladonova, who finished second, being better in the bottom part of the course. I would dictate this more to a bad start of Carrier. If she starts better, I think she's in the mix for the win. And then we don't know how it plays out, right? It could go either way. Carrier, Revol, they would have been evenly matched. Revol, to me, it looked quite impressive. And what is a fact is that the French have been up there with their starts this season. Desprez has also done it. Carrier last year was a horrendous starter. She's improved that, but it's still probably her biggest vulnerability in the race. We saw it in Hulst, we also saw it in Zonhoven. Her starts aren't great. Those starts back there were still doable. She could come back from them relatively easy within the span of a lap, but here it took her a bit longer, also because of the nature of the course. I think we could be in for a good battle here at the World Championships. Probably Carrier is still going to be my favorite, ever so slightly. But we also shouldn't forget that Revol, who was in the mix here, was a first year. And that's impressive. Revol, who took the win even. I meant to say that Revol, who was in the lead, and Dutern, who was in the mix behind, together with Zélie Lambert, are all French first-year riders, which is quite impressive.
Yeah, definitely is. I mean, Kabaka in third, you were talking about it being somewhat of a surprise. Don't you think that there is also maybe an upwards trajectory starting this year, that she's getting a little bit better, or do you think that can be somewhat disregarded because of the circumstances and the way she was able to get herself on the podium?
I don't think we can fully say the crash is the reason Kabaka ended on the podium. She was doing quite well. She was actively pushing the pace, not only chasing the race leader, but also trying to pressure the rest. So she looked quite good. She looked the best she's looked since Dublin, since probably the European Championships, actually. She had that fourth place in Dublin, but then it went downhill quite a bit, with the national championships last week being a real low. She hoped to win the title. She'd been better than Moose pretty much all season, but she didn't deliver on the day. She couldn't meet the expectations. What really struck me there on that course was that she just refused to shoulder her bike on the running sections, instead pushing it through the mud, often remounting at tough sections too early, or at other moments just for very brief sections where Moose just kept running. Moose raced way smarter there. Today Moose was 10th, which was a solid outing, but Kabaka was way ahead, or I should actually say Kabasa, that's how I've been told to pronounce it. It's tough for the World Championships. I don't think, as said, that crash is the only reason she ended on the podium. Last year she didn't really feature all season, but boom, World Championships came, 7th place, she was up there. I'm going to put her on a dangerous list of riders for that championship. Hopefully next week gives us a bit more clarity. But I will say that Pelizzotti, first year, made a very strong impression today. And I had already done it, but put her name down. If Pontoni can sprinkle some magic that he's put on with the first years, like we saw with Viezzi and Agostinaccio, who knows what she can deliver next year.
That's very interesting. I think someone that we haven't really mentioned so far, in fourth, Cusack. What do you make of this race compared to how her season has been going? She started very strong, then had some downs in a way, and now back in the top 5 again. What do you make of that? Is that also going towards the Worlds? Is that someone in which you think could be playing in the mix for a podium, or is that maybe going to be a difficult task?
I think a podium for Cusack at the World Championships looks like a bit of a stretch. First, some context about today's performance. So there was that crash, which moved her up, but potentially also moved her down, depending on how you look at it. Did she lose out on Kabasa, or did she actually gain positions because of the fact that Pellizotti and the other French rider crashed out, Duterte? Hard to tell, right? I don't have any horoscopes here to tell you the definite outcome of that. She looked very good early in the season, right, with that win in Dublin, but then her Christmas World Cups weren't that special. I would say she's just 1% short, and because of how competitive that field is here, that means she drops from somebody who's like a contender to somebody who's like an outsider slash semi-long shot. And she was very good on the road climb today. She has the power, so that she performs well here in Dublin and in Benidorm is perhaps less of a surprise, considering that I also see her future more as a road rider. She's really talented in that regard. So again, it's hard to say. This category is very close, but I would just put her 1% short of what it takes to finish on the podium at the World Championships. Then the junior men's race, the last category we'll cover. This was nuts. Like at the end of the first lap, Issam, 25 riders were like on a chain together. And the second lap, there were still 20. But the one leading the chain for most of the race was Agostinaccio. He took the lead with an impressive move. He was 7th going into the field, but then on the grass climb towards the bridge, he placed a big attack, moved past 6 riders to take the lead. He got a little bit of help from Hofer. He got a bit of help from a few others from time to time, but he was the one dictating the race. He took the lead and eventually just slowly but surely thinned out that leading group until he also just snapped everyone. Vassal was in second early in the race, but he had some sort of issue. I think he flatted, he fell back, that's for sure. And as soon as Vassal was gone, there was a gap and Agostinaccio was gone. Hofer placed a big acceleration in the hope to bring the gap down, but that didn't work out. Agostinaccio went on to take the win. Battle for second place was a little bit closer. Jumar had led the chase on Agostinaccio for a while, for about a lap and a half, when in the final lap he got passed by a number of riders, Arthur van der Boer, Hofer, Noval Soares. But I don't really know how it happened. Jumar managed to repack himself in the second part of the course, stormed back to the second place of the group and finished there. Hofer sprinted to third place ahead of Noval Soares. And if you were to ask me, Issam, Agostinaccio is looking like the most complete rider at the moment.
At least I was a bit worried about the amount of races that he has been doing, but clearly it hasn't been really a factor today. As you said, he's maybe the rider that has been probably the most consistent. Jumar also had his fair share of good results. Do you think that it's somewhat the difference between the two riders right now that we will see also in the next couple of races, or is it really because maybe Agostinaccio got a course that suits him just a little better than Jumar? I mean, Jumar also is someone that should normally do quite well here.
I don't think you can bring the course argument into this. They are both relatively similar. If you want to talk about riders who find a course that really suit them here, I come to the riders in third and fourth, right? Hofer, Noval Soares. These are the riders that need to let their engines and their watts do the speaking. They don't want to rely on any sort of technical abilities. You saw in that regard that the riders who do rely on those technical skills, Oscar Amy, Cas Timmermans, they finished 10th and 8th respectively. Gilles Lejeune, also a technical rider, he crashed on the barriers in the first lap, managed to recover okay from that, finishing 7th, but also he didn't have the raw watts to compete with the big horses up front in the race. Michiel Maurits is a rider who has a big engine. He's certainly disappointed. He looked to have completely blown his hats off early on. His skin suit was completely ripped open. You saw a lot of federations only supply their riders with long sleeve skin suits, and it was definitely too warm for that here in Benidorm. They were all just exploding from the heat. So back to the riders at the front, no, I don't think it's a matter of course. I just think Agostinacho was slightly better on the day. That's, again, not a guarantee that this will be the case in the other races, but yeah, it's looking quite interesting, and it's also looking interesting in the overall World Cup. Agostinacho and Jumar are tied on points. Whoever finishes ahead next week normally wins this classification, but also that is not necessarily a given. Your worst results get scrapped here. Lejeune, with a good result, can also, I believe, still win the overall here. Agostinacho and Jumar have 2 wins, so Lejeune, if he wins, then also puts himself in the mix. So it's looking tight between those 3 riders. Most likely the winner on head-to-head between Agostinacho and Jumar takes the win. So yeah, I enjoyed watching this race a lot. It was really, really an entertaining watch.
Well, if you have other names that you want to mention, you can definitely do so. But with the men junior category, it's always a blast because it's very close, and a lot of the riders have a chance to get themselves in the top 5, top 10, or even go for the win. And yeah, it's always a blast looking at those riders, and mistakes could be very costly. You don't really have the time to recover from that in a sense. So yeah, if you have someone in the top 10 that you still want to cover, maybe a Griglioni or Grigolini, sorry, or someone else, you go ahead.
Yeah, we need to mention him because every single race there is a rider in the top 10 that we don't expect there. In Dublin, that was either Aidan Volmuth or Keanu Gaines. In Hulst, it was the Slovakian rider Sista, who finished 4th. In Zonhoven, we kind of made this case about, I don't remember who it was, but I know for sure that in Besançon we made the case about Milo Wills being up there. And now it's this Italian rider who I needed to look up during the race on the start list because the live timing was broken. Who is Filippo Grigolini? What is he doing up there? Okay, he finished 11th in Hulst and Zonhoven. It was still very surprising to see him do this well here. He looked powerful. He's quite a big rider. But I already put him down in my notebook because, again, that Pontoni magic on the first years, that improvement they make from first year to second year. We've seen it with Vietzi. We've seen it with Agostinacho now. He went right into the booklet because I need to keep a close track of what's going on there. Then I think, well, we're already quite far into the podcast, but there's no way around it, Issam. We need to cover this still. This venue here in Benidorm is being considered for the World Championships 2029. And just regardless of what other contacts there were, etc., I'm excited to see the World Championships go somewhere else than that small post stamp Netherlands, Belgium, north of France. I think it would be good for the sport to return to Spain, a historic country which has roots in cyclocross, that's organized the World Championships a number of times, but the last time I believe is in 1984. So we're talking a long, long time ago. Here in Benidorm, there was the XXL UCI delegation to see everything here, to see how the event is run. The organizers are talking, well, we don't know if we're going to get it. Of course they're going to get it. The UCI requested this. They had their big delegation here. I'm quite confident it's going to happen. So apart from my excitement, I think there's a number of things that need to be improved. First of all, there needs to be improvement on the parking, and that is more regarded to space for team parking than anything else. Spectator parking will be moved out, working with shuttles, whatever, that's completely fine. That's normal for big events. Secondly, spectator crowd management. This course only has one entrance. They open it at 9 o'clock, which is really late. They also don't allow the soigneurs or the people with the bracelets in. Even the photographers were lining up outside before that. Needs to change. One entrance isn't enough, especially not if you put it at the bottom. It cramps people up into what is already the most cramped part and packed part of the course. Good spectator turnout. You need to create more space because there were some 18,000 spectators. For the World Championships, you can probably count on at least 40,000 when you put it up here. That means you really need to have the space for that. At the moment, that's not there. So you need to consider involving the football stadium in some way or form. You need to consider how to make more of the course accessible, sacrifice the drone, which makes great shots to allow spectators onto the climb, create a bit of a Tour de France atmosphere there. And that immediately ties into the third problem, the course. My problem is not that this course is fast. Cyclocross has a long history of featureless courses being host of World Championships. Middelvaart was also a joke of a course. Nobody liked it when we went there. Pontchâteau is a fast course, which is probably in some way comparable to Benidorm. We've been to Treviso. Bogense was also not a special course. The start-finish, I was a bit skeptical, but I got pointed out, is it really that different from the start-finish, for instance, in BLS? No. My bigger issue is that so much of the course is single file and there are so few possibilities for overtakes that one mistake by yourself or, more importantly, by somebody else can ruin the World Championships, which is by far the most important race of the season. I am, however, confident. This is not negative. There's 3 more editions before a potential World Championship. Every year this event has improved. This year with only Van Aert, the spectator numbers didn't take a big hit. It has the potential, it has the money. Yes, it's atypical, but if it can host a World Cup, it can, in my opinion, also host a World Championship. They just need to work on improving these things, straightening it out, making it a bit wider. I spoke to a couple of people today. They said, well, for a World Championship, we would have much more money and the municipality would be much more supportive if we just break down parts of this park so we have more room for spectators and that we have more opportunities for the course, that we're not binded by all these street lights that are up there and whatnot. There's time, right? And you don't need to have a perfect World Cup to improve it for the World Championships. Look at Hulst. They are undergoing massive changes to make it all work next year.
Yeah, exciting times, and there's going to be a lot of work that has to be done for that to happen in a successful manner. I think it's exciting in a way because we will most likely break that sequence of Dutch and Belgium races, World Championships that will be happening. So I think in that sense is definitely very exciting. You know, type of course, and I know what you mean. We definitely had courses in the past that were somewhat questionable. Or at least were not really the typical cyclocross courses in a way. But I don't know if this is something that I want to see on the World Championships. I'm still somewhat in doubt, I have to say, but I think it's exciting in the sense that we will most likely have a World Championships in Spain. We will break that streak in a way of Belgium Dutch races. I think that's a positive. And I think also it's going to help with the commitment Benidorm has. I don't think there's any doubt in that, because as you say, the crowd always turns up for that event. It looks quite good. Visually also, it has quite some attention. Within the cycling world, it has quite some attention. So I think that it is, in many ways, it's definitely a formula that is working, and it's a great success currently. For me, it's just a sort of... I never saw Benidorm as a venue that could be holding a World Championships. And since it now is going to happen most likely, I feel that, as you say, a lot of changes have to be made. But there are reasonable changes. And I think that if they would do that, then I could be on board and be on the hype train a little bit more, and really look forward to the event. But we'll have to wait and see. Things can change. Normally, it sounds like something that will probably happen. It sounds like something that will be most likely the one that will be announced, somewhere in September, I think. And then we will know more. And from there on, they will, as you say, they will have quite some additions to test things out, to change things around. And they can work towards, hopefully, a very successful World Championships.
Look, I get your question marks because I also had them before this weekend. I struggled to see how it all would happen. But when I walked around today, looking at everything, and also yesterday at the training, like how can a World Championship take place here, I saw quite a lot of opportunities for it. Compare it to Hulst, where they're building 4 pontoon bridges to make a World Championship possible in their city center, where they're needing to build Formula 1 sized grandstands to make all their spectators fit in. Compare it to that, and all of a sudden the changes that need to be undergone here in Benidorm seem marginal. So I'm excited for it, and definitely to end on a big positive note, the Diaspora marketing here works great. I'm not a big fan of the Belgian angle that says, oh, this crowd is only big because so many Belgians that stay in Benidorm come. No. 75% of ticket sales are to Spaniards. Don't be fooled, people. The most people here are Spaniards. But still, a 25 to 30% share of people who don't live in Spain is a large proportion for a Cyclocross World Cup. It works well. There were many cycling teams coming out to watch their friends, their rivals, whatnot. There are many people that live around here that are Dutch, Belgian, British. They spend the winters over here and they come to the cross. That's the Diaspora marketing I'm talking about. It's getting late. The podcast is coming to an end. And on that note, I will end. It's working quite well. And I've said it before, the World Cup should try and be a stepping stone, encouraging its non-Dutch Belgian rounds to also host the World Championships if they have the financial means for that. That's the case here in Benidorm, so I'm excited to see it. Of course, there will need to be changes, but with how things are going here, with the knowledge that the organizers have, I'm confident it will happen. Issam, thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you for having me. It was a long one, or it was a long one, and it was a pleasure having to say my say. And hopefully you enjoyed your stay there. And we will be probably back. I don't know if we have something midweek, but most likely with the double weekend, it's going to be it's getting busier and busier towards the World Championship.
Yeah, we will have a midweek preview for the final World Cups of the season. Then after that, it's of course the World Championships preview, and then 2 days of World Championships podcasting. Thanks everyone for listening. We will be back. Make sure to leave a comment if you made it all the way here, and goodbye.